Hey guys, in this video I'm going to run down the edits I made on Stormtroopers the fan film. I came across Stormtroopers on YouTube, and as a filmmaker, there's some things I would have changed and tweaked a bit. So I downloaded the clip and started editing just out of curiosity to see how much I could push the film and see, what's the capabilities of editing an already edited film. So I learned a ton just by doing this. Mainly a lot about using J and L cuts for dialogue, how that really speeds up the process. There's going to be a lot of examples of that. Color grading, adding more sound effects to make it more immersive. So there's going to be a lot of examples of that. And as you watch this, there's going to be little tips and tricks and very subtle techniques you can use in your own film. So there are a lot of things you can do with editing, but unfortunately, since I didn't have any of the source footage, I was limited in some places. Some things I wish I could change would be the music to give it a classic Star Wars feel. Try to change some of the laser effects, VFX work. But a lot of the stuff was already there in the film, and with my editing, I was trying to refine it to make it come to life even more so. I want to give a big thanks to Michael and his crew for allowing me to share this edited version with you guys. And by no means am I trying to be critical of their film. It's simply just out of curiosity. I wanted to see for myself how I could be a better editor. And I'm glad they're allowing me to share it with you guys so you can see how much you can actually do with editing alone. So yeah, feel free to grab a cup of coffee or sip of tea or whatever you may do, because this is going to be a long video. So first we're going to take a look at the first scene, and then we're going to show my edits. So this is the raw, I guess, footage, the unedited version.
My first draw.
Don't stop. Keep moving. Look after your mates.
And we'll stop it right there. That is the first main scene. So there's a few things I know I wanted to change. First, it is very drawn out. It's about 2 minutes and 25 seconds. There's a lot of pauses, and I think if you kind of trim those up, that kind of increases the pacing, while you can still deliver that same effect of it being, before the war effect, before the battle. So I wanted to make a few cuts just to keep it moving quicker. But let's go straight to the first edit I made, and that is I just trimmed up those beats a little quicker. I felt just the original was a bit too long, but that does kind of help set the tone. I just trimmed it up a little bit right there, and keep playing. Same original clip, and I added a little bit of sound effects, which we'll touch on later. But the next cut, we cut out some of the visual effects, the close-ups in the beginning, and we just have the walker under the water right here. And it's just, I feel it's just a bit smoother when you're going through. I mean, you do still see the walker under the water, but I guess it's not as emphasized. And later we do see the walker is underwater. So I think we can put two together. We have this nice one take right there. And then, yeah, no edits right there besides the audio, which is just extra weapon handling, just to kind of immerse the experience. And as we continue, nothing's really going on here as far as editing. And I just cut here where she just churns, before we have her standing still and then her looking to camera. I just wanted to speed it up a little bit, so I made a cut there. She looks at the two stormtroopers. Kind of just trimmed up the pacing a little bit. Added more weapon handling sounds. Like right there. All of this is just trimmed up. Let's go back a little bit. Opening the little container, I added a little sound effect there.
It's my first drop.
Now this was a bit tricky of an edit. I wanted there to be like a sound effect of the gun to make it sound like intimidating for him to speak up.
It's my first drop.
And then we have this little awkward pause. Her reaction. In the original, it felt just... it felt a little awkward. So I was trying to figure out how I can make it feel a little less awkward. But that is what I came up with. I just trimmed up some of those clips. Each individual clip, basically.
Don't stop.
There's one shot here where it's actually further back. She hands her the gun. There was a wide shot, which instead I just have that little close-up where we still see his face. It's not really important that we see her get the gun, and it's implied, but instead we focus on his reaction. Again, it speeds things up, and we focus on our character.
Don't stop.
This dialogue, instead of the long pauses, I just, again, cut those together closely. So now we have, let me go back to the before.
Don't stop. Keep moving.
Getting a long pause.
Look after your mates.
So it's about like a 5-second gap. So instead, on my version here,
Don't stop.
don't stop.
Keep moving.
3 seconds.
Look after your mates.
So it's just tightening those up a little bit. Yeah, it just kind of helps speed things along. And I think this pacing is really important with this film, especially Star Wars films, because they go very quickly. Each shot is usually not much longer than 3 seconds. Some shots still apply, but...
Keep moving. Look after your mates.
So those are the main edit points where I trim things down just to keep the story moving along. As far as the sound effects, I just have very subtle... Let's see, I downloaded this from Freesound. It's Hand on a Canteen. I don't know, I just felt like it added a little bit of extra atmosphere. And there's some of the certain weapon handlings, and I may have added some reverb on those as well. There's a stairwell, so we get a little bit of little echo. Okay. That as far as the sound and also the edit points. The last thing I want to touch on in this scene is the color grading. Let's take a look at this first shot right here, our main shot. If we go to the before, here's a Stormtrooper here. Turn off the effects. It's very flat, and the whites seem to be a little bit on the greener end. Very flat, not a lot of contrast. Again, if this is what they were going for, that's all fine. I just wanted to change it up, add a little bit more contrast and punch, make it feel a little bit more like Star Wars. So this is the difference now. Let's turn off this other stuff right here. Our main color change, this color board, we raised up the highlights, lowered the shadows, as you can see right there, and we changed the color too. Added a little bit of orange in the shadows, reduced the greens and the midtones. And that is our main change. And then the saturation curves. Here, I think what I actually used is right here. I selected the whites on the Stormtrooper, and here I can make those brighter or darker. So I'm making the whites feel more bright. And color curves, this adds just a bit of contrast, as you can see here. Raised up the midtone slightly. Very subtle shadow change, and raised the highlights because the majority of it was fixed in the first color correction. It was kind of like that throughout each of these clips here. Let's go to this shot right here. There's before and after. Raising up the color of the shadows to more red. It looks like they brought up the blues, so I'm actually just compensating back and making it feel the shadows are a bit darker, and that kind of color corrects the image. Again, that's more of a personal preference, what I like to see, so I definitely prefer that. Let's go to this shot here and turn off the effects. This is before and after. Again, just add a little bit of like magenta in the skin tones, and contrast. And yeah, that's pretty much for these shots here. I was able just to copy and paste. Not a huge... It's a very subtle change, but I think overall it makes it feel like a Star Wars film. And yeah, all these other sound transition fades, it's just because when I... So if we look on the original soundtrack, we have some fades going in and out. That's because when I make the cuts, I have this extra sounds that I don't need. So I end up having just to fade them over. You can pick up the like subtle changes and the little dings that happens every 5 seconds. You can hear those kind of shift back and forth. But overall, I don't think you notice it too much. Alright, so that's the edits made in the first scene. Now let's move on into this next part. So let's take a first look at the original short film. And we'll pause right there. So in this scene, they're getting ready for battle. You know, everyone's a little nervous, but they're preparing for battle. So now let's take a look at a few edits that I made. So here, instead of cutting to a person, like the first shot of the guy, I just cut down to the weapons and focusing on them, and then we reveal to their faces. I'm not sure why it doesn't make a huge difference, but I think it flows a little nicer. Add weapon sound effects, handling, and it's all very condensed down. So instead of having waiting around, it's much more trimmed down. Okay, so we're at about 2 minutes and 20 seconds in this cut. We go back to here. So, let's see, what is that? 40 seconds. And before, we're at, let's see. It's about a minute in the original film, and now this is condensed down to, what did I say, 40 seconds. So, yeah, again, that just takes it and speeds it up. So cutting those out just not only just, I keep repeating myself. So a few of the shots in the original film were a little repetitive. I was actually able to tell a little bit how they filmed this with one particular shot. Let's see if I can find it. This shot here gets out the gun, hold it down, and then we insert his reaction. And then right down there, it resumes. So there's a few of these shots where there's actually not one continuous clip, although it kind of looks like that with an inserted clip. They're actually not one clip, it's actually two shots. So they actually set up one shot taking the gun out, next shot revealing the face. So whether they're saving time on set, you can tell a little bit how they filmed this. Kind of interesting. Let's go through my edit. There's a little bit of fade here to speed it up. There's a little bit of fade in the beginning, so that way we have this audio in sync because I took out a clip. Weapon handling sounds. Focus on the commander. And actually, very subtly, we can see in their little nodding. I trimmed up that just slightly because before we had a little bit of extra That's just a little longer, and I just trimmed those by just a few frames, so their nodding seems more fluid. Yeah, and then if we look at the color grade here, oops. So let's take a look at the color grade. Here's before, after. Again, it's a similar kind of look. I just raised up the shadows with the red and bring up the highlights and bring down the shadows. Very subtle, but it adds a little bit of contrast and pop. I'm not really adding too much in here. Just kind of trimmed up those clips again. And I took out a few of the shots where it felt repetitive, like with this guy, and again, head bobbing. If we go through the original, I think it shows him twice. Yeah, right there. I just wasn't a fan of this shot for some reason, so again, I just cut that out and sped up this guy's slider shot. There we are. And it fades through. Not a whole lot is changed right there besides, you know, cutting it down. So now let's go on to the next scene. Let's stop just right there. This scene is pretty cool. Seeing the walker come out of the water, something we haven't seen in Star Wars movies. This scene was a little tricky to edit, and I did it a few times because we're dealing with those sound effects of it. You know, the Imperial sound siren going off, and then also the sound effects of the walker. And trying to sync those up while trying to shorten it down proved to be a little tricky, but this is what I came up with. I think I end up cutting down this opening shot just a smidge, and then I brought in this the siren. See our guy. And if we actually look here, this seems to be like another camera. It's a little lower quality, but it is stabilized. So I'm wondering if this was like an Osmo, because some of the other shots look really nice as well. It would have been great if they could have had it all one camera to kind of match evenly. But this is what we have. And yeah, they had to do what they had to do. So here I think I just messed with a little bit of the color. See, this is before. Add a little bit of contrast. Just try to make it match just a bit more. Alright, now let's continue. Let's see if I can just show you the edits I have down here. Can move this. Alright, yes. I guess that's not making it any bigger. Alright, so this is the edit part. So over on the timeline, let's take a look. A little shorter. And I actually slowed down the movement of the walker. On the previous clip, it was moving really fast and it didn't feel authentic. So I actually slowed it down, I think, to 80%. 85%. And then I add a little bit of optical flow just to make those frames blend in. So this makes the feel a little bit more, I guess, heavy, slower. his reaction's much quicker. Again, I just trimmed up his reaction time a little bit. And then this, it feels just a bit odd because the walker's already up, and that's pretty quick. But either way, I just cut to here. Just moving up, and I had to sync up those the feet hitting the ground sound effect. And this is a new clip. If we look here, this is an AT-AT cockpit view. I was actually playing around with the idea of having like an interior view of the walker coming out of the water. But as I was trying to do that, I couldn't really find all the assets to do that. I am not a visual effects person, although I would like to learn a little bit more. This is what I could do inside Final Cut Pro. So let's dive into here. So I found this little YouTube video of the walker with a green screen. So as we can key out the green screen and we can place some footage over. This is actually footage of the island. Because you had the locations listed, I was able just to find video of that island and I was able to insert it. I think I added a little bit of camera shake because this is actually drone footage. Yeah. What did I add? A little bit of handheld. So this is before. And forgive me for those cropping lines because I had to make it fit like that. This is very smooth. That wouldn't match up well at all. So I just added a handheld little thing and just messed with the shakiness and distance. And it worked. Let's see there. And to make those, I had to reverse the clip and then unreverse it and play that over top. So now we have something like this. I also had to tweak the color so that way they matched. So again, this is what the footage looked like beforehand. Let's see if I can, like that. So if I didn't do any color tweaking, it'll feel a bit off. So just a little bit of magenta, I think. Let's see, what did we do? A little bit of exposure and, saturation change. Yeah, it's very basic once you look at it. And then I also had to fix a sound effect for that because I wanted a little bit muffled, like you're actually inside the cockpit. So I think the sound effect, yep, muffled right there. Just placed that. Sounds like we're inside of it. Again, I would really like that shot of the walker seeing from an interior view of it coming out of the water. Yeah, but I couldn't find the resources for that. I trimmed up this little aerial shot here.
Defensive positions.
And we'll stop right there and we'll continue this part. This is a good example of this edit, so I'm going to show you of how you can place dialogue over cutaway shots or like a wide shot of your actors. So that way you can manipulate the dialogue to speed up certain parts. Let's look at mine here. So it says walkers. It's a raid right there. We don't need that close-up of him saying it's a raid unless it was really important and we want to see his reaction. But I felt we could just place it right over there.
Defensive positions.
And that also speeds up her timing of her reaction. He walks away. The music for this was a bit tricky because we're dealing with the sirens blowing and the music coming in. So with the edit, it's just a little bit of tweaking to like fade in between those. Yeah, so pretty much trim things up. Let's look at the timing here. 250 to 308. And if we look at the original, we're about 4 minutes, 10 seconds. It's about 30 seconds, whether I was able to convey it in 18 seconds. So that is the power of editing, and especially with dialogue, because you can trim those up. But again, it all depends on your story and whether you want to drag it out, slow things down a little bit, or speed it up. Generally, I like to speed things up, just keep things moving faster, and that's part of just editing tons of YouTube videos. If we look at the color grading here, turn off all the effects. This is before and after. So yeah, again, pretty much the same coloring and exposure change as before, and I added a bit of sharpness, whether you can tell a huge difference or not, just to kind of match with the other camera. And then right here, the exposure curves, I really wanted to give the walker some texture and it feels like it's actually there. So those bring in more contrast, makes it feel more alive, I guess. But also this angle, you have to be careful with some angles on certain people. This angle on her is not the most flattering, but whether as you like look at footage over here, she doesn't look as bad. So yeah, not the most flattering angle. Really nothing I could do in editing to fix that. But yeah, just be careful. Certain actors, you need to find a good angle for them, whether they knew that or not. But anyways, all right. So now we're getting on into the war scene. So now this is when the battle commences, the exciting part, what everyone's been waiting for. Let's take a look at the original. Pause it right there for just a second. I want this film to feel like Star Wars as much as possible. So this first shot here looks like there's visual effects guys coming out of a cave. Really cool shot, pulling out. But something about the shot I didn't really like or find as appealing, and didn't really feel like Star Wars. So instead, cutting to them walking out, people are going by. This feels like Star Wars. You're down on the ground with them. So I just cut straight to that. You can see the color grade difference. And for the laser fire, it doesn't look the most Star Wars like. Again, if you could do like more traditional firing effects, I couldn't really fix it a whole lot. I tried a little bit, but it didn't look any better. But instead, I just tried to improve the sounds. So if we listen to before, we're missing some of that satisfaction of a gun being fired. So put in those sounds. It really immerses your audience. And there's her reaction. A few of these shots, like right here where they're moving around, you can tell they're kind of moving around intentionally in the original. So you can trim that up, and I think I sped these clips up. Okay, by 115%. That just speeds up the movement, creates a little bit more shakiness. And I think I cut out a few of the shots of their reactions because you're playing the same thing over again, and we really only need 1 or 2 shots to convey that. And we have her, which is another one of our main characters. Again, I think I sped up his shot 109%, so I just had to dial it in to what felt right. Again, took a few of those other shots away. There's this shot which, so it's really interesting as we see the faces of our stormtroopers. Which traditionally we don't, we have the helmets on. And I think once you put on the helmets, this like, okay, this is Star Wars. So yeah, I just kind of cut a few of those shots out because once we go to the helmets, that's when it gets really interesting. I added some extra weapon fire sound effects. Let's turn all of these off. Let's see what we have. Still really cool sounds already there. Just adding a bit more, and I think we added this walker sound. So this is taking like a sound effect out of the Battle of Hoth scene. And these shots here, a whole array of Battlefront weapon fire sound effects. Some of these are more accurate, while others are not. They're just there to sound cool. This shot here is pretty cool, having them walk across. I actually thought about... Let's pause there for a second, okay. This shot is really cool, and I thought about actually replacing this original shot with that. But I think it works. This blaster sound effect versus without it. We see his reaction, and it feels like it's firing a lot faster, so just add in those sounds. Makes it a little more intense. Here, I added a bit of clouds in the background, and to do that, this is our... Let's make those invisible. This is just a background of a cloudy sky. And because our walker is against just a white background, I was able to use a luma keyer. So, before, after. It does mess up a little bit with the fire shots, but they're going by so fast you're not going to really notice. And it makes it feel like it's in the same place. Now, that being said, I didn't really notice beforehand that was completely white, but it adds a bit of texture. Again, another sound effect for explosion impact sounds. I added quite a few impact sounds to make it feel like, okay, it really got blown up. I think right here, I still have some of the sounds of the operator flowing over to him. Again, that just helps smooth it out, keep it going. Alright, now let's watch the originals. Right here. We have a wide shot, then goes to that. So I cut out those 2 shots. And here I'm going to cut out, trim this up here. Really cool sounds with that. Again, there's just a lot of trimming in between each shot. Again, there's a lot of... Each shot is like a reaction shot. We don't need really 4 of them. So, yeah, let's go back to the re-edited version. Those 2 shots were cut out. Trim these up to make it feel faster. And there was very subtly a sound effect of not his mask making that sound. And I actually tweaked that so it's only his sound there. I'm not sure why, I guess it just felt more natural. Again, cloud sound effect. And if we listen here, there's a very important sound, I think. It's the sound of its moving its little neck, I guess. But actually in Star Wars, that is the sound of the foot about to smash on the snowspeeder. So, but I naturally felt that sound fit well with that, because it's moving slowly, but this machine is deadly, even though it's slow. Again, really cool shot. I like that a lot. Again, another subtle effect. I just trimmed up the first few frames. If we go back here, we kind of see it not firing, then it's firing. Right there. So instead, just firing. I really like that ding 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 ding. But I also complement that with this sound effect. The TL50 sound. Alright, so this, I can tell, is for comedic purposes. I had this explosion. I just kind of threw it in there to help transition. Again, I guess it adds a little bit more to that comedy effect. And then there's a few of the shots we cut out when her reaction here. But yeah, I think we need to go back to the original. Again, proof sound effects. This shot here was cut out. If we go back to that. Again, it's just low quality, but I think it still makes sense if we don't have it. So I just cut it out. So this shot right here, where she's looking off, she's like not even like aware where she is. And I think later on in the film, we see that she's a traitor. So that may add a little something, but in my cut, I trimmed up that end slightly. I was also considering whether just to cut to her right here, where she says keep firing. That makes it seem like she's in this battle. But yeah, that's the cut right there. Let's go back to original. You can see that color difference. Alright, we'll stop right there. In this same shot, I cut off a few of the frames at the end because we can see she's not firing. So that little sound, I didn't even add that, I don't think. That's just what's there. That just blends in much better. Right there. I don't think I changed much besides sound effects. Here this is sped up quite a bit because we have a lot of filler shots that don't really need to be there. There's a few similar shots. And the movement of the Stormtroopers are sped up again. 115%. Maybe of their hands moving. Sped up the same. And just him walking off. Then it goes to there. Let's take a look at the color tweaks I made. Particularly this shot here. Before, after. I think we agree this looks a little more, like it has an extra pop. It looks a little more appealing. Yep. Just a few tweaks there. And as far as the war scene, you can see before, after. Has a little bit more greens, feels a little bit more warlike almost. Before and after. Big improvement there. Again, in this cool shot. Bam. Alright, now let's keep moving on. This is when the Stormtroopers get out of the walker. I think I did take out this shot from right here. Because we only need right there to tell the story. Very cool shot, but the colors were just a bit off for my preference.
No mercy.
Just keep a note on this shot here.
Fall back. We've lost.
Okay, then we see the guys get out. And they commence fire. Alright. In my version, let's take a look. Cut out that first shot of the walker. The colors are tweaked, so the blacks are black.
No mercy.
And they go straight out. Okay. If I had one thing I may change is this shot of these two. Because later on, this guy,
Fall back. We've lost.
he says, "You're weak to run." And where I place this later on, she doesn't feel as much as a coward as she does here. So that may be something I'm not too sure about. But in my film, in my edit, we go here, straight to the beach. let's go back to the originals. Just pause right there for a second. In this edited version, I cut a little bit later on. Again, that just trims it up a bit, and we see more of the Stormtroopers in that one shot. Adding a lot more weapon fire. We can see this is a creative choice on the filmmaker's part of the Stormtroopers being static, and while the Rebels shots are very shaky. So I kept true to that. I didn't want to add a camera shake. But I did on this shot, because it's like could be a Rebels view. There, some key things were changed. I cut a little bit off the end of this clip and a little off the beginning of the second clip, because as you look, she holds up a gun. It's like a little pause. It just feels a little bit flat, I guess. So I kind of just sped those up. So she lifts her gun. He's there. Gets him. And importantly, that impact sound, which the football hit, that was in Final Cut Pro. And there's a little, I think that's the football hit too. So those combined shots. And that will take us through the next part here. Alright, so we're back. Now let's continue on watching the originals. Keep going here, you'll see in a second.
Primary objective achieved. First one into the mine shaft. Second squad, fleet to beach.
Alright. Oh, so there's a few shots you can see I cut out. In particular, like this shot here. The costume was just not doing it for me. And like this shot here, just the motion feels almost robotic. So I cut out some of those shots and try to get the most realistic performance. Okay, and so instead of the movement we see with that aerial shot of them going around to flank them, that again slows down the momentum. A very long take. And we see this angle, which is a cool angle, but I cut it out. And that impact sound, we need that too. So if we cut to this, we see him, flank him, we see them move, get hit, and add the Wilhelm scream because every Star Wars movie has to have a Wilhelm scream. We see this. Okay. And then that flanking shot, I trim that slightly towards the end too. And then we go to this shot. Because now we have a similar movement of pacing.
Fall back. We've lost.
Primary objectivity. First squad, flee the beach. Second squad, into the mine shaft.
Okay. So, yeah, we talked about this shot here. This extra part may seem kind of useless of an edit, but I'll show you why I did it.
Primary objectivity. First squad, flee the beach. Second squad, into the mine shaft.
It says first squad sweep the beach, but in the film,
Primary objectivity. First squad, into the mine shaft. Second squad, flee the beach.
okay? The reason is the next scene takes place in the mine shaft. So, what's not important is sweeping the beach in this moment. So I said first squad sweep the beach, second squad into the mine shaft,
The mine shaft.
and then they go in. It's a nice transition. Yeah, so what I had to do to change this is first move a few clips. I had to separate that little cutoff sound, so that way I could rearrange it so that way it fits well. And there's still a little bit of inflection difference,
Second squad, into the mine shaft.
but with that cutoff it sounds fine. Now let's take a look at the color correction. This is before and after. The blacks are true black, and I just prefer that. Here we're gonna get a little bit more of that greenish color come out in contrast. Same thing here. Add a little bit more magenta. This is before, after. It feels real. Alright, so those are the differences. A lot of subtle changes, but they do add up. Now into the mine shaft. Where this cut between the Stormtroopers and the rebels.
You will wait to run.
These kyber crystals are worth more than your pride.
They'll be worthless if we're dead.
let's just stop right here for right now. Okay, so there's a few things I wanted to tweak, mainly that when the rebel was shooting him, that reaction needed to be tightened a little bit. And also, I did cut out the stormtroopers walking through the beginning. It wasn't really adding much to the story, and I'd rather focus on these two characters because we just had that one conversation before. So let's follow them. Without further ado, let's look at the edit.
You will wait your run.
These kyber crystals are worth more than your pride.
They'll be worthless if we're dead.
We have that transition. Just a little snappier.
They're coming. How do we get out of here?
You don't. Where's your rebellion now?
Sir? Kyber crystals.
Oh, let's stop there. We're getting past ourselves. I was so involved with it. Alright, so, like we said, we cut out a few of those scenes of the stormtroopers walking. Right there you can hear some water dripping. That's something I just thought could add a little bit more atmosphere. Steps, sound steps. Add some footsteps. Just to kind of immerse.
You will wait your run.
There was one shot where there's a wide shot of this. I actually thought it was a cool shot, but we didn't use it. This right here. It just never really worked. So we just
Wait your run.
These kyber
Cut
crystals
here.
are worth more than your pride.
They'll be worthless if we're dead.
not a whole lot's happening besides added effects of dripping, footsteps, and the color grading. Also, I did tighten up a little bit of their reaction. Let's see here. Here's the original.
You will wait your run.
These kyber crystals are worth more than your pride.
They'll be worthless if we're dead.
Her reaction here. I only use a part of that, and he puts the kyber crystals away. That just got cut out because we just really want to see her reaction.
These kyber crystals are worth more than your pride.
They'll be worthless if we're dead.
Again, have that dialogue.
Worthless if we're dead.
It's a J cut. You're having that dialogue spill over to the next shot. Her reaction. And then goes to this shot. Actually, I just now noticed she looks the same way, the stormtroopers. Just a little thought. Go to our stormtroopers now. We're following their journey. Oh, before we go into that, let's touch on the color grading, because that is a big thing that changed here. Let's go to this shot here. This is before and after. This color correction version brings back some of the tones in the cave. If we look at what I actually did, brought up the shadows to the red again, exposure adjustment, and like this shot here, big difference. I feel this looks a lot more natural. So yeah, pretty happy with that color change. Alright, now we're following our Stormtroopers. Okay, so the first shot of this guy running out is sped up again, 115%, just adds a little bit more movement. Mess with some of the audio where it says take him down. Cut straight to that. Blaster sound. Impact sound. Makes a big difference. Again, tighten up those clips a little bit more. Makes a big difference. See what we had before. You can tell a few of those pauses were just not needed, so I'm not sure who says take him down, if it's this guy over here or not, but other than that, she hears the echo. That's a nice use. Okay, this is another example of the dialogue, pushing the dialogue into the next shot. If we go back right here, we see his whole, he delivers the line, but there's nothing here.
Don't. Where's your rebellion now?
And we're missing that, the sounds that immerse us.
Now?
We're missing the sound of the, whatever it is, just her stabbing him. And then this shot, I feel we're too long on that shot, and so we know it's not really real. The blood doesn't feel real. This close-up takes too long to convey it, so just shorten it up and it feels more believable. She pulls it out.
Don't.
A lot more sound. It makes it more gruesome. And if you're watching the film look, this is actually your melon stab sounds, which I found on Free Sound. I didn't realize when I downloaded it, but it was perfect.
Where's your rebellion now?
It just adds a little bit more texture. I don't know. And then here I did a few changes which you may not notice.
Where's your rebellion now?
Yeah, we see this close up and then she just leaves. So I cut out that close up, and that way we see her, she grabs it, she leaves. We cut back to him. And then I just let this play out. I could have shortened it, but I didn't really feel the need to. I think the reaction is good there. Here, the Stormtroopers are sped up again by 115%, 125%, just to make their movement feel quicker. And it's sped up in this next shot too, but you don't really notice that.
Sir?
Alright, now let's go back into the original. Again, so I didn't really change much besides the speed.
Sir? Kyber crystals. Rebels are weaponized to hide bitter. Ultra fire trooper. Get topside. Get a recovery team. You have answers for us.
Okay. So let's now watch the edited.
Sir? Kyber crystals.
This cue, we hear that, we cut over.
Sir? Kyber crystals. Rebels are weaponized to hide bitter.
What's great about Stormtroopers is you can't see their lips move, so you can mess the dialogue however you feel like.
Ultra fire trooper. Get topside. Get a recovery team. You have answers for us.
Yeah, see here, we don't need to see him talking because we already saw in the previous shot.
Get a recovery team.
Just move that dialogue
You
over.
have answers for us.
And there we are. So yeah, again, it's pretty much what I've done before. Trimmed up stuff, cut some shots out. Oh yeah, let's take a look at the color correction difference. This is a big one. There's before, after. Really like the color change. It feels definitely more interesting. Alright, let's continue. We have close-up on her. See, that's interesting. We start up as a close-up, then go to wide. Back to close-up.
Didn't you get all of the book?
We see her saying it. And then she gets out. But it's weird because she gets up and she leaves. But in this next scene, you'll see they take her out. So that's what I decided to fix. So instead of starting out on the close-up, see the wide shot, okay? We clearly see what's happening. The Stormtroopers' movement are sped up again. I think this was 125%. She looks down.
Didn't you get all of the book?
Then we see the close-up, her saying it. And I did have this cut just to see her reaction. I don't think you actually need it at all because you could just cut from there to there. But it adds just a little bit of time for the music to go back up. This shot here is of the walker. Before I actually had this clip here, which is of the actual island. I think it actually does add more context, but knowing someone else shot it, I don't know if they would be open for me to use that in someone else's film, so I just decided to leave it out. It is what it is. I didn't ask them for permission. You could always do that and they may be thrilled about it. Again, color correction. Let's take a look at that. Boom. Feels a lot more filmic. Add some sounds of the ocean, just as ambient. Let's take a look at the originals. There we are. My adjustments were made. I made this clip shorter. I actually do like how the Stormtrooper appears here, but it just didn't really fit. I think it's a cool shot, but again, we have a lot of reaction shots here, so I just chose the ones that look the best. That one there. And the other guy's close up. Here we're not seeing much, but we're hearing. So, in this version, we have that J cut. And that saves a lot of time. And then lastly, I just sped up the credits a little bit because this is YouTube. You kind of want to get through the credits quickly. And just had to fade the audio for that. And those is the final edits and tweaks. If we look at the color grading for these shots here, before, after. Yeah, so that is the edited version of Stormtroopers. I learned a ton by editing this, seeing the capabilities of editing, seeing what I could do to make it a little bit better. I hope you guys enjoyed the edited version. Big thanks to Michael for allowing me to share this with you guys. Be sure to check out the originals. Let me know if there's anything you would have done differently as far as editing. It's great to see different perspectives. So this is probably by far my longest video on this channel. I appreciate if you made it this far. Thank you so much. Yeah, again, this was a great experience for me learning more about editing. And I hope you guys learned a little bit too.